Welcome. This is the Bridge Network, City Church, Canada. We're very glad to have you here. And our vision is outstanding life and service to God, transforming our world. We invite you to come for the word, but we know that you will stay for the kingdom. The Bridge Network is located in Canada, Vancouver, and we believe in connecting to each other, to the community, and to God. To support us and to be part of this, these are the information you need to be able to do you to our program today, and we trust that you're going to be blessed. Thank you so much for being with us. The Bridge Network, City Church, Canada. God bless you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here this morning. Today just happens to be one of those odd days where you have my birthday clashing with Sunday service, and I've been up through the night speaking to the church in Nigeria, and so and I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, so 6 hours behind the church in Nigeria and 3 hours behind the church in Canada, but we're live now, so I want to thank you for being here. The reason why I want to do this morning is simply because I believe that birthdays are time for you to reflect, to see whether you're still on track to where God wants you to go. I don't think it's so much about the celebration, about the cakes, about the gifts and all that. I think it's more of a time of reflection, because God himself commanded the children of Israel that every year they should remember the Exodus. They should remember what he did for them. Because as human beings, we tend to drift off God's purposes. I'm not an exception in that. We tend to drift up what God called you to do. We tend to drift up what is priority in our lives. We tend to drift off the purposes of God for our children, our marriages. We tend to drift off even our purpose at work, in career. I want to give an example of Disney that had gone to bring back the grandson of Disney to come back to the helm of their affairs because they've drifted off again. So it's something that we all do. But it's also a time for me to reflect and get questions from the people who I work with and I pastor and I have the privilege of leading. And so I want you to please be open. There are going to be errors in the transmission, but I can't reproduce what we had this morning. And so I thought it's better to do it here, to play it again for you. But I'm here, and I'll be able to chime in and maybe take questions if there's anybody available online that wants to do that when we finish. So Sheldon, thank you. Can you please play the video now? God bless.
We're trying to get it into the auditorium.
Yeah, sure.
All right. I think
Can you hear me
can
now?
hear you now, sir. Yes, we can, sir.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, how are you?
Very fine, sir. Yeah, everybody is saying happy birthday to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Good
Morning. We just have a short lull because of the internet and the gap. It's going to come back in a minute, so just stay tuned. We haven't had the time to edit it because we're going to have a 3-hour difference. And so just hang in there. That's it. So I thought we were back. Seems as if we've lost the stream. Anyway, let me see if I can do it from here, and because my internet is a lot more efficient than the one that's been transmitted from. So just give me a minute. I should be with you. Anyway, it's been amazing that 1 year has gone. 1 month has gone already. Have been sent so far. I'm still not in Canada. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, so it's a bit of a different time. It's almost 2:21 here, so you're not as alert as you would be. In Canada, I'm 9 hours behind you, so it's always a bit earlier. And but here it's much later. It's almost 2:21. We're 6 hours behind you, and so I'm not as alert as I thought I would be. But I really don't have anything specifically prepared this morning because I've actually tried to take some time off for the last 3-4 weeks. I was here with my wife, and she's back home now, and there've been some decisions I have to take and crossroads that I'm at. But I was particularly moved by Kunle's message last Sunday, where he spoke about purpose from a perspective that I felt was critical, that we all needed to look at, which is the fact that we're all waiting for this end game, and the same thing's happening in our country, right? Look at what is happening with the fuel. Look at what is happening with the Naira notes. Look at what is happening with the elections that are coming up. Look at all the negativity. Look at all the hope that is being dashed as such. At the end of the day, what I feel at the end of the day, which is one of the reasons why I'm sure Pastor Lumide will be sharing it with you in a few, maybe later on in the service, where this idea of hosting and understanding the presence of God and understanding why we need to be purpose driven. And this new month, I've actually gone in a slightly similar direction, which is seeking God's face. This is the time we've got to take our eyes off everything that is going on, you know. And many years ago, Mrs. Okutiang shared a message with all of us, and she shared a story which I haven't been able to find the details of, but I'll just tell you the story and then I'll open up for questions. And it talks about this deer that is caught in a storm, but it's pregnant, and the baby is due. There's a fire burning, there's a heavy-duty wind blowing, and there's a hunter trying to take a shot at this particular deer that is pregnant. And the deer has how many options? She can dodge the bullet, run away from the bullet of the hunter, or she can run away from the fire, or she can run away from the storm. Whichever one, she's going to put the baby's life on the line. But you know what she does? She completely ignores everything that is going on around her, and then she focuses on just having that baby, her purpose, to bring that baby into this life. And somehow, miraculously, the storm turns into rain. Well, here I tell the story that the storm ultimately puts out the rain, and the lightning in the storm blinds the hunter, and then ultimately everything that was working against her good worked for her good. Ultimately, just telling you and I, or showing you and I in that story that we cannot worry about the things that surround us. We must be focused. We must keep our focus on God and on our purposes in God. Again, like I said, they're having internet problems, so I'm going to try and stream from this part of my own. I thought we had solved the problem, but this is it. Let me just get it. Just give me a minute. Yeah, got it. That shift, because we've done elections like this before. Not exactly like this, but you know what I mean, where we put our hope in a man and we've been disappointed so many times. This is not the time for that. This is time for a different strategy. So I'm going to stop there. And thank you all for at least being here, standing with us. I'm going to talk about church hopefully, when you ask your questions, and about how certain things are clear in my mind, especially when it comes to purpose. But let me stop long enough to hear from you guys.
All right,
God
thank
bless.
you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Please, if anyone has a question, please you can raise your hand. And I think it's good for us to ask questions this morning. But Pastor, I just want to ask this question, especially with what is happening in our nation right now, the Naira, the fuel situation, the elections that is coming, and even if we listen to all the talks, even from the leading presidential candidate and all that we have around us, and the topic that we are treating at the Real Success Seminar for the month, purpose driven. Why should we be purpose driven? Especially, I'm sure that when you pick this topic, you're in the capacity of what is happening right now in our nation. So how does this tie together? How does this also help us to be able to navigate the current situation and circumstance that we are in as citizens of this country?
Okay, first and foremost, we all have to remember this famous principle. Thank you for the question, and it's really a very good question. When we look at the story, especially when we listen to Stephen Covey, he talks about sphere of influence, the things that we can change, the things that concern us, and the sphere of concern. This is the sphere where we can't do anything. I think too many of us focus on the things we can't change. We complain about the president. We make statements on social media. We say things that are not going to make any difference. Somebody gets up and says, Tinubu did this, or this man did this. All those things don't change anything because those are your sphere of concern. You can't do anything. But in the area you can make a difference, you tend to ignore it. You tend not to do what you're supposed to do. You tend not to contribute or make a change in the place where you have a lot of, where you have the authority and have the power. And this is where prayer comes in. Prayer allows you to deal with the areas of your concern, but it also allows you to deal with the areas of your influence. But that's the only leverage you have. You can pray about the things that are completely out of your energy to. But if you don't do anything about where you're standing, let's take this famous thing about PVC. A young man a few days ago raised some story. He's very popular. He's from the north. He began to. He specified the 10 largest voting blocks in the country, and he said in the north, where you have a voting block of 2.4 million, almost 1.7 million people will show up to vote. He says in the south, where you have a voting block of 2.3, only 700,000 will show up, because there's apathy in the south while there's commitment in the north, and that we should stop worrying about, what the speculators are telling us. But we should ask ourselves, what am I doing about who's your candidate for this election? Who do you believe is the person that's going to help you? Get up and vote, no matter what anybody else says about the situation. Pray specifically about what you want to happen in the nation. What can you do in your immediate environment to bring that thing to pass? For instance, TBN members are very well known when there's a fuel shortage or something. They get there, they organize the filling station, they make sure everybody gets a fair chance. We're doing what we can in our sphere of influence. You say, why is this critical? It's little droplets. I remember as a young man many years ago, I was very young, and one of the things I felt the Lord taught me was, if you throw a pebble into water, it forms a ring. And as those rings begin to dissipate, the further they get away from where the pebble has dropped, the weaker they get. And so even as a person, no matter what you do, your influence has a limited sphere. But imagine throwing 1,000 pebbles into that water and each one of them generating a ring. that water is going to feel that something has happened to it. And what I feel, the biggest challenge I feel with this election, even with this fuel situation, that we never sit down and say, how can we work together? How can we all in church now organize ourselves so that we all get fuel? How can we organize ourselves to vote? How do we organize ourselves to get water? How do we organize ourselves to get housing? How do we organize ourselves to get better things for our schools, for our children? How do we organize ourselves to get scholarship for our kids? How do we organize ourselves together to form better things for our lives? But we're so focused on things we cannot change. Listen, as great as some of these leaders can look on paper, the real heart of the leader is something that nobody can determine except God. And so what is most important is that, and this is my watch. And if you talk about, the Bible talks about watchmen, this is my watch. What can I do? This is not going to happen on my watch, or this is going to happen on my watch. I feel these are the areas we need to focus on. I can't solve the country's problem for fuel right now, but I can solve the problem for TBN. What can I do? Who do I know? Who can I connect to? And one of the biggest mistakes we make, especially in TBN, is, because I get this a lot, the church is not doing something. We've always advocated for the church to be a blessing to a society. My focus has never been be a blessing to the church. No, it's be a blessing to your community, to your family, to the place where you find yourself, in your career, in your profession, in wherever you find yourself. Church is just it's a school, it's a development place. But we still, I don't know how to explain it better, we still focus more on ourselves, on what we can change, but we ignore. I think it's Maxwell that said, we underestimate what we can do. And I don't want to misquote this, but he says, we underestimate what we can do in a day or something like that, and then he compares it to what we can do in 5 years. Sometimes we focus on the wrong thing, and it makes things get bigger and bigger and more uncomfortable. I feel right now we need to focus and say, listen, I'll talk about purpose-driven things. As a matter of fact, the whole idea of purpose-driven started at TBN last year when I was in Canada and I was watching the Christmas service. I now realize that most of the time people come to church, or even pastors leading services, or worship leaders coming in to lead worship, or even the person making the announcement. I found out that 90% of the time we have no clear thing we want to accomplish. We don't have we don't say, okay, this is what I want to accomplish. There's a purpose for what I'm doing. And yet God whom we serve does nothing without purpose. And so when we don't know what God is trying to do, when we don't even understand purpose, everything we do can end up being vanity. Let me stop there. Are you guys still there? Hello?
Action.
Okay.
Here. We're back.
You have to tell me where I stopped. So that will help.
Yeah, you were talking about designing, having a purpose before even stepping out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm an architect by profession, and for us to design anything, we have this principle, which unconsciously is almost very articulated in the Bible. We must begin with the end in mind. I have to have an idea of what I'm trying to accomplish. I have to know what I'm trying. Most of us just live, based on the next. We allow circumstances to determine what we do or where we go. We don't have anything. And I'm not saying you must have a plan for every good thing, but the good thing is that you can go to God and say, what are you trying to accomplish? Why did you give me this child? Why did you give me this opportunity? Why is this door open unto me? Why am I still alive? Okay, for scarcity, what is the lesson? What can we learn? This election, who am I supposed to vote for? It doesn't matter what the outcome is. The important thing is, what's your conviction? Now, if you take it all the way to the leadership, which is one of the reasons why I chose a very controversial theme for the purpose-driven. That the purpose-driven leader is worth thousands of people who are not serious about understanding purpose. As a matter of fact, as we go through the year, we're going to discover that purpose-driven businesses, when you look at the most successful businesses in the world, from Apple to Google to successful people like Oprah or Bezos, check and see they have clear purpose. Some of them are not good purposes. Some of them are wicked purposes. But it's never about making money. It's always about, I want to make a difference. There's something I want to accomplish. How much more Christians? Same thing with leadership. China said they were going to take millions of people out of poverty. That was the purpose. Look at how it has transformed the country. Our country doesn't even have a purpose statement. We don't even have a place where we're going. But the point I'm trying to make is, as much as that is negative at that level, if I can correct it at the local level, if I can correct it with individual families, with somebody who's the boss of an organization, or somebody who's HOD, or somebody who's looking after a family and its children, if we can get people to be more purposeful, a teacher in a school, a principal, class captain, a child, if we can just embed this, then we will produce in our nation people who are purpose-driven. And it will change things in ways and manners that we've never seen before. Let me stop.
Thank you, sir. Any question? Anyone has a question in their house? Okay, Kifat. Anyone also has a question online on Zoom? You can raise your hand as well. For those who are on Zoom, and thanks for
Hallelujah.
Joining. Okay, Kifat, go
ahead. Happy birthday, Pastor.
Thank you.
So I want to ask. You've been doing ministry for more than 30 years, and in all of those times, I want to assume that you must have faced quite a number of disappointments. So my question now is, what would you consider, in your over 30 years of doing ministry, what would you consider as the greatest disappointment, or as the most shocking disappointment you've ever faced, and how were you able to, move past that disappointment and get better? Also, the second question is, sometimes doing ministry, I want to assume that there's times where you feel like giving it all up and just, laying it down and just do some other things. For all those seasons, how were you able to get back up, and what kept you going? Those are my questions.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very interesting. That's very, very interesting question. I'll tell you a few things, and then I'll see if we can tie it together. Most of us have to remember the story of David and Saul, how Saul tried to kill David, which was simply because there was jealousy and there was fear that he was going to take over the kingdom, how he hated the relationship with Jonathan. And that's a very popular story. There's a book called The Three Kings, or We Three Kings, I think, which I strongly recommend everybody gets. It's more or less free online today. It talks about the story of David, how Saul tried to kill him. But there's a counter story to that, which is how David's son also tried to kill him. So it's almost like David had these two extremes in his life. So I remember when I was in Jesus Embassy, and we had just bought this building, 442 43 million. Myself and Dr. Elijah had to be personal guarantors for that 43 million. I'm talking about it. The church refused to pay it. We would have been responsible for it. We had to run around, do deals, get the church purchased for 43 million. It was about 400,000 US dollars at that time. And then we bought the property. We had to renovate it. We had to pay back the money under 2 years. And then we came up with this strategy of renting out part of the property to a bank to raise some of the money. We had some great grandiose commercial ideas for it. In the middle of that, it was one of my greatest, people started writing letters against me to the head of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, and criticisms and all that stuff, and a lot of it. But I remember I took a break at that time and came to England, and I met a friend of mine. He said to me, Francis, let me tell you something. I don't think I have any problem with you dealing with Saul in your life. Can you guys still hear me? Hello?
We can hear you, sir. We can hear
Okay,
you.
good.
We can hear you.
Because I don't have any problem you dealing with Saul in your life. He said Saul is going to throw a javelin at you and you're going to manage to dodge because you're trying to do good for the church. It's not Saul that is trying to attack you that I'm worried about. He says it's Absalom, who's going to be one of your own children, who you've encouraged and brought up, who's going to get up one day and say, they're better than you, they want to take over the kingdom. He says, I'm more worried about how you're going to treat Absalom than I am about how you're going to survive Saul. And that, to me, covers the entire spectrum of what I think ministry is all about. In all of our lives, we're going to have Sauls, people who hate you for no reason, who don't see anything good in whatever you do and throw javelin with you. And TBN actually suffers a lot from my reputation because of the way people perceive me outside the system that I came out of. However, that's not the place where your disappointments come. Your disappointments come from the place where people you've worked with and turn around and do things that scare you or make you wonder if you are mad or crazy. But like I said, that story of Saul and the story of how David handled Absalom, how he left the kingdom for him, how he walked away, how he said, you be the king, that's fine. As a matter of fact, it got to a place where they managed to kill Absalom, and he was getting sad and almost started crying until one of the officers there got up and said, if you don't change right now, nobody will be left in this kingdom by the time we finish. Now, if you read those stories in the intensity, you'll find out that that's the range of emotions you go through as a leader. It's almost like there's always those two extremes. And so to tell you the truth, my biggest fear or my biggest concern starts with the first one, which is my boys, my two sons, that they don't reject this gospel that I preach, that they embrace this gospel that I preach and they live lives that are in the will and center of God. That's, for me, it's priority. The second thing I'm more afraid of is that I wouldn't fall on the side of either Saul or Absalom, that I would be objective. So I'm not so much worried about what others are going to do, because they're going to do it anyway. I'm more worried that one day I don't fall into either category of Saul or Absalom. Because, my brother, there's judgment. There's judgment. Those of us who are married, there's a scripture that most of us ignore about how God says the way you treat your wife determines how well your prayers are answered. We treat it as if it's not an important scripture because it's said once, but it's a powerful concept that God watches the way. As a matter of fact, the Bible warns those of us who are teachers that there's a greater judgment upon us if we're not careful. And so, to tell you the truth, I just pray that to God that I don't disappoint God in my own life more than ever. But the disappointments of hurt by people and, being misunderstood or being badly treated or, We've been extremes. There've been some crazy cases that people have had to apologize to for the wrong they did. Many like that. The people who've gone through hell, and the minute the solutions are there, they just walk away, and say things about you or to you that you wonder, is this a movie or something? Is this real? But at the end of the day, it's not important what anybody does. It's important how I respond. And sometimes I run out of patience. Like I told you, for the last 3-4 weeks, none of you have actually seen me on any of the platforms. I only came back a few days ago because it was time for me to get my act together and time for me to make some fundamental decisions. And so it was time for me to get back. I wanted to take a retreat. I wanted to just stop. It wasn't a retreat for spiritual purpose. It was just a retreat to just stop and recalibrate to, okay, what do you want me to do? Because this is not where I felt I needed to be at this time of my life. What do I need to do next? So that's what I think that's where I'll stop on this one. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. I think it's a worthy thought for us to consider. Any other person has a question? You still have another question? Let's see if another person has a question. Okay, so anybody online?
I don't think it's so much a question. I'd really like us to have a discussion. Mine is not it's not questions and answers because one knows better than anybody else. It's what gave birth to TBN was a place where we came together. I remember myself, Kunle Akinwale, I think Pastor Sheon and Biodun will sit down in my house once a week. That's how this Saturday meeting actually started. We'll sit down in my house every Saturday. We'll brainstorm, we'll pray, we'll birth and try out new crazy ideas. Because we knew that there was something unique about the congregation God was putting together. But we also knew that we couldn't follow the status quo. We just knew there was a different kind of element he was asking us to bring. And what I see us begin to do is wanting to fit in to what everybody else is doing. Other churches are doing this, so we do it. Other churches are doing that, so we do it. I think somewhere along the line, this element of sitting down, what can I do to be a blessing to the community? What can we do? I remember we organized presidential debates. I don't know if many of you remember that, when Buhari was going against Jonathan. And people came from all over the city to come and listen to those debates. We did mock elections, got results, which tallied with the final results during the elections. We even had Professor Shubaju zooming to talk to a meeting that was organized by Bayo of Landlords fame. Something is happening where we're somewhere moving backwards. And it's truly because of our circumstances. And I'm not saying this to say anybody's weak or anybody's doing. No, it's the pressure of life that is coming upon all of us. That we've now switched to survival mode, which is scary. And that's what I want to challenge all of us about today. And hopefully when we get to the network service, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about this concept of the presence of God. It's, how do I put it? How do I explain this? There's some things you're going to learn with hindsight that people who are looking forward will not agree with until they get there. You know, when you tell them that, because I'm staying in an old friend's house now, who's been looking after me for years. He's my medical doctor when I had some issues many years ago, but he was a student in UCH many years ago. He was a student when he came to Jesus Embassy, and he became my friend. He became my friend so much that people in church used to tell him not to walk with me, that I was a very strange person. And that I'm not one of those. I wasn't your normal kind of pastor. You should be very, very careful. But he stuck to his guns and said, no, this is my pastor, but he's also my friend. And he's been with me. He was there when Adam was born. We traveled together to Abuja, and we've had a relationship now. I've been there at the birth of, 3 out of the 4 of his children. And it's just been a remarkable relationship. And his extraordinary success has just been a joy for me. But it also started off with adventure of stepping out of our comfort zones. I want to challenge you guys because right now I'm getting a lot of spiritual questions and all that, and that's nice, and I appreciate that. But I really wanted the questions about where are you going? What are the challenges you're facing? Where do you see things going? Do you even have a clear picture of where you want to end up at the end of all this? What if the wrong person comes into office? What are you going to do? What if the right person gets into office? What are you going to do? Those are real questions. I think Kunle was the one asking yesterday. Last week, he said, some of us are panicking over the fuel situation and all that. But most of you remember before I traveled, I kept warning that when they take off the subsidy, the dynamics of the country is going to change. I never saw diesel going to 700 and 800 naira per liter, but it did. Now we have to imagine the same thing with fuel. We have to be ready. What are we putting in place? How are we going to weather this storm? What wisdom is God giving us to plan? I'm going to stop. I don't know what time. Yeah, it's almost time for the service to come to an end, so let me stop and take maybe just one more. God bless you. Have we lost the audio again?
Your perspective and advice, and I want to assume that it's also
I didn't hear the first. I didn't hear the first part. I didn't hear the first part.
I just said thank you for coming. Okay.
I didn't hear the first part. It was quiet for the last 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I said thank you for coming from the perspective of looking for the problems and how a solution. So I want to ask a question. It's more like seeking an advice and seeking your perspective. I want to assume that this issue concerns some of my peers too. So we are currently at a generation. I am a generation. I represent a generation, and currently we also have another crop of generation coming behind. But there's a problem of how to now lead the coming generation, because whether we like it or not, the baton must be passed and things must happen, and the baton must be passed. But I realize that my generation right now, my own particular generation, we are at a point where we are dealing with a whole lot, dealing with the national issues, for example. Some we are still dealing with how to even finances itself is an issue which we may sort of obstruct or distract, or should I say hinder people from coming to a place where they can now take full leadership and lead other people behind. So what's the way to go in all of this?
Let's go back to the first comment that I made. Is this a sphere of influence or is this a sphere of concern? Anybody can answer. Is this a sphere of influence or is this a sphere of concern?
Okay,
you see what I
about
you see, you've just said exactly what I told you that we were doing wrong. We are focused on things we cannot change. Now, let somebody who creates. Okay, let me give you an example. You heard about Academy Award winning movies, right? You've heard about music that hits #1. When the person was producing it, he wasn't producing a movie that was going to win an Academy Award. He wasn't producing a song that was going to hit number one. He was producing the best possible song he could produce. He was writing and producing the best possible movie and doing it in the best possible way he could. All the consequences, when Obama became a lawyer, when he joined a particular group, when he became a campaigner for social issues, presidency was so far away from his mind. But it was in his faithfulness, in the things that are in front of you, that provided the opportunity to lead. My question is, why am I worried about what? Have you organized your friends that are even in church right now? Okay, how do we help you with your finances? How do we help each other with our finances? How do we help each other with the economy that we're facing? Have we even organized with the area we have influence in? And before we start worrying about anything that is outside us, I remember Yemi Adamalako, she runs this movement in Lagos. I've forgotten the name, but it was started by Abiola's wife. She said she was invited to University of Ife, one of these universities, to speak. And she said, the problem with you kids in the university is that you're very good at going on strike, you're very good at complaining about things in school, but you are lousy when it comes to organizing change, even in your own campus. And yet you want to change the country. You can't. You are not going to change anything if we don't start acting. You know, this is what I said to somebody a few days ago. The things Jesus began to do and to teach. We are very good at teaching without doing. The things Jesus began to do and to teach. That's what the book of Acts is all about. The things that Jesus began to do and to teach. The church is just teaching, and everybody is an expert. We have a son in church. He is a son. He is qualified to be a son. If he teaches now, it is a son that has achieved, that is teaching. But we have people who are not sons, who want to teach you about how to become a son. The logic is totally baffles me. Do. If you do, you learn, you get so much information that when the opportunity comes to lead the next generation, you are prepared for it. But there's nobody who's doing what they need to do right now. They're waiting until they become politicians or they enter into politics or power is given to them, even in church, until somebody gives them a platform before they do anything. No, you do, then you teach. If they told you Jeff Bezos was coming to Jogger Center, all of us will leave church right now. If they told you John Maxwell was coming, if they told you Steve Jobs or Oprah Winfrey was going to speak, we'll all leave church because we know they're doers and achievers. We don't want to. We just want to, we're really concerned about, we're concerned about that. We're concerned. We think this is the best way to do it. Put your hand on the plow. Do something. I'm not worried about the young people, because if the right person is practicing right now and is getting himself engaged, he would rise up to the top. Right now, Peter Obi's popularity is shocking everybody, including Peter Obi himself. Everything that's happening to Peter Obi right now is strange, even to Peter Obi. Now, I'm not endorsing him or going against somebody else. The point I'm trying to make is, it's still a matter of track record. What did you do? And then the circumstances in the country. I don't think people are voting for selecting Peter Obi out of the fact that he's a good man. I think they're simply tired of the status quo. And so they're looking for them. It's like, okay, we're tired of what is happening. Let's go in a totally different direction. That happened with Obama, and it happened with a lot of other people. But that's circumstances which we have no control over. If the fuel crisis wasn't the way it is right now, maybe people would even think about Peter Obi. If this whole wahala wasn't happening. So circumstances are adding or contributing to somebody who has tried to build a track record for himself. That it's even shocking him as to his popularity. So for me, it's a sphere of concern that you spoke about. But spheres of concern are solved by people who do things in their spheres of influence. Jesus began to do and to teach. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think that bears repeating the message that Pastor Kunle preached to us at the Real Success Seminar last Sunday. The fact that whatsoever your hands finds to do. I think we are so much worried about the things, and unfortunately, this age we are so much worried about the awards we want to get than the work that we should get done. It's a craze that is really getting to us right now. So Pastor, just a final thoughts or question, and you can also round up with that. I'm sure, I don't know if anybody is aware of what is happening in the tech world right now, the mass layoff. The mass layoff in the tech world right now. And when I read the news about the tech world, what is happening in the tech world, I remember that there was such incident, especially in the banking industry at some time in the past, where there was such a mass layoff. And what that does for people is that people become depressed, dejected. They no longer want to trust in a particular system and what have you. But I particularly read an article, I think it was written by Aboyeji, I've forgotten his other name, and it was actually using that to talk back at purpose, in the sense that what is really, let me just put it this way, that at the end of the day, we should not now get maybe to the end of our life to just find out that we've ended up pursuing the wrong things. Because now people are feeling somewhat, and unfortunately there are a lot of them are young people in that space. So what would you say, especially coming back to that topic we have for this month? And I'll also, like I said, just also round up as well in the area of purpose, and really finding out what our purpose is and pursuing it, so that we don't end up getting to the end of our life to find out that we've been chasing after the wrong things.
Thank you so much. That's an excellent question. There's a new software, AI, called ChatGPT. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. And I think everybody should check it out. You should absolutely check it out. It can write your essays, it can answer questions to you like you're talking to a human being. It can help you write blog posts. It can help you write adverts for your businesses. It's an absolutely scary AI. A few days ago, somebody asked me to do something, and I used ChatGPT to answer the person. You should try it even with Christian questions. It's absolutely, believe me, it's a scary innovation. It's free. So those of you who are very Jewish, it's free. So don't panic yet. It's called ChatGPT. Sometimes when you're trying to log on, it's full. Now, let's talk about this layoffs. What you see, whenever people, there's a man called Paul Zempilza, and I want to encourage people. I keep giving these topics in these books, but people don't go after it. I can only bring you to the water. I can't force you to eat. Every time, like this ChatGPT that has come out, every time technology comes, it puts certain people out of business and creates new jobs for somebody else. For instance, most of you will know when we had this 33 RMP records, 45 RMP records that we used to buy, vinyl. They call them vinyl. We call them LPs here in Nigeria. Most of us forget that there was a whole industry, Polygram, who used to produce all that. And then we now went digital to cassettes. And then everybody that was in the vinyl industry lost their jobs, but people who started doing cassettes got new jobs. And then we went from cassettes to digital downloads. And everybody who was in the cassette business lost their jobs and went to the digital circle. And of course, we started downloading music. Those who were producing digital albums or CDs lost their jobs to those who were, now the whole thing has gone crazy. Every time there is technology advancements, for instance, We used to have cars that had carburetors. So all the mechanics knew how to fix carburetors. After that, fuel injectors came out. Those who didn't make the transition lost their jobs. We used to do billboards where artists used to sketch. Now we use computers to sketch. And then graphic artists used to have a lot of money. Now you have software that will produce art for you. All the graphic artists are losing their businesses. This is life. It's going to continue whether we like it or not. And this is where positioning, this is where seeing what is about to happen helps you to move yourself to where you need to go. You know, I was talking to my accountant the other day. I said, listen, because he was talking about something about, I asked him to do something in terms of marketing, and he said that wasn't his area of specialty. And I said, my friend, the way the world is right now, nobody needs an accountant sitting in an office because there's enough software to do accounting without any human being. So my friend, if you think there's still jobs for accountants, you're fooling yourself, who don't have the other things going for them, technology, social media, and all that, learning how to use those software. You better change, or else some computer will take your place. All I have to do is input the details, and then it does all the accounting and audit. As a matter of fact, I use a software here in Canada to pay my tax called TurboTax. I simply enter my figure. There's a human being at the other side, but the computer does 90% of the work. The human being just asks me a few questions and then helps me to enter it into. And I pay them, and then they do my tax returns for me. Everything automated. Now, the point I'm trying to make in all this is, let's go back to what Pastor Lubide is trying to get all of us to see now. Is the fact that, listen, you can go through life thinking that what you're doing is everything. But that's not it. It's not, how do I put it? Well, I think it was Miles Monroe who taught me this. He said, I used to think that mission, vision, and purpose were three different things. I used to think you couldn't relate to them in one soul. But he said, no, they're all the same. All right? Your mission, for instance, is to provide a home for your family. Okay? Your purpose will be to provide shelter for your family. That you want to build a house that has a roof so that water doesn't come in, has windows, doors, has electricity and all. That's your purpose. It says, but your vision means the way my house will look will be different from the way Pastor Lumide's house will look. But ultimately, our mission are the same. And our purposes are the same. But our visions are the way we interpret it. And so for the point I think is that is coming out of all this, anything you do without a purpose, especially a purpose that lines with kingdom agenda, seek ye first the kingdom of God. I make money. I make millions of naira. I don't give. I don't help other people. I don't invest in other people. I don't provide for those for my loved ones. I don't do all the things that money was meant to do. At the end of the day, I can die with billions of naira in my account and get to heaven and get a judgment that I didn't want, simply because I missed the purpose of what God gave me. You know? I think it was John Maxwell or one of the people that says, most of us are climbing the ladder of success, and then we'll find out one day that it was leaning on the wrong wall. This is why purpose is such a fundamental part of what we're doing. It's not an optional extra. I remember it was Miles Monroe that made purpose very, very contemporary for us and revived purpose in our life, because most of us were just drifting. And why I particularly like what Pastor Kunle did the other time was he took it off this idea that there is a terminal purpose, you know, for everybody. That means if you're not doing this thing, you're not fulfilling purpose. No. Everywhere I am. Let me ask you, what's your purpose for today? Somebody called me a few hours ago and said, what are you planning to do today? I said, well, I'm 6 hours behind you, so I haven't made any plans for today. But because he said that, I said to myself, okay, where is the landmark here in Louisville? This is Muhammad Ali's city that I can visit. I've been to his museum, I've visited his whatever. What is the other landmark I can visit so that I can add that to the further of my activities to say, okay, I learned this on my 61st birthday. And I was in Louisville and I saw this. On my 50th birthday, I was, on my 40th or something birthday, I was at Martin Luther King's whatever. I had to spend 50 in Nigeria, so I know all these things because I was very careful about that. But the point I'm trying to make is, don't do, even if it's a purpose that you consider silly, I just want to have fun. I just want to have a good time. I want to put a smile on my wife's face. I want to put a smile on my kid's face. I want to surprise somebody. Just don't do things without purpose. That's the bottom line. That's why we need to be purpose driven. You know, the funny thing is that the criminals in Nigeria are more purpose driven than the Christians or the righteous people. Because they have a purpose. They want to make as much, steal as much, eat as much as they can eat. Meanwhile, the Christian gets there, has no plans to steal or to eat or do, but he has no plans to do good either. And so nothing happens. We have to go back to purpose. Or else, this life is just going to be, you know, the Bible talks about tears in heaven. Have you ever considered that for a minute? A place that is paved with gold? A place where jewels, all the jewels we're running after on the earth are going to be used for your tabletop, or your shoes might be, your shoes might be diamond crusted. I mean, the bottom of your shoes might be diamond crusted. Because heaven has no sense of value about that. But let me put it like this. Why would somebody cry in heaven? Why would somebody cry who's made it? He's escaped hell. He's been saved by the Lord Jesus Christ. He's standing in front of his king. He has made it. He's missed hell. Why is he crying? It's because that's a cry of regret. Oh, I could have done this, but I didn't. And sometimes the pain of regret, it's so bad. Those of us who are ministers know when God tells you to say something in a service or preach something or share something and you ignore it. And after service, when everybody has congratulated you on the sermon, all of a sudden you're quiet with yourself and all of a sudden the Holy Ghost says, but I told you to do this. That pain of regret is so bad because you can't go back and change it. You missed it. You would feel bad, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, because purpose is critical. I don't know about you, but guys, I know some of you are young, so you think you have time. Some of you are old, you feel, why is this man still troubling me about purpose at this age? I tell you what, whether you're young or old, the time is short. All of us who have had all these ambitious plans, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, then I'm going to serve God, or I'm going to do God's will for my life. Let me tell you this, you don't have the time. Neither do I. It's time to at least sit down and say, you know what? Why am I here? Let me face it. Let me even ask myself those fundamental questions so that I don't end up this whole life and find that I just wasted it. Thank you. God bless you. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Shagun, you can stop now.
I think it's a good place to stop and for us to reflect. Why am I here?
Shagun, can you hear me? Thank you. All right. Let me first say thank you for any one of you who's made the time to go through all this. It's interesting that I had to sit through listening to myself speak, and it really encouraged me because it wasn't a prepared sermon or something that I had taken too much time to think about, but I knew that somehow the Spirit of God will help this become relevant. We're going to be looking at purpose-driven through this year. We're going to look at purpose-driven businesses, purpose-driven family. We're going to be looking at purpose-driven relationships. We're going to be listening to all sorts of parts about purpose-driven. But at this particular time, because of the heavy-duty election taking place in our country in February, I've decided that we zoom in on leadership and purpose-driven leadership. But the beauty of it is that leadership covers both families, businesses, and nations. Whenever you have a dynamic, purpose-driven leader, everybody in the country knows something different has come. It's not too late. It's also the time for you and I to really ask ourselves, have I given this any thought in my life? What can I do now to change things? So let me thank all of you that have sent messages and greetings, and some of you have even given me money. I want to appreciate that as well. God bless you, and then we'll have the network service starting in a few minutes, and then we can round up for today. God bless you, and thank you for watching. Children, you can sign out.
Welcome. This is the Bridge Network, City Church, Canada. We're very glad to have you here, and our vision is outstanding life and service to God, transforming our world. We invite you to come for the word, but we know that you will stay for the kingdom. The Bridge Network is located in Canada, Vancouver, and we believe in connecting to each other, to the community, and to God. To support us and to be part of this, these are the information you need to be able to do that. We welcome you to our program today, and we trust that you're going to be blessed. Thank you so much for being with us.